Aloha everyone, my name is Alessandro and this is the Temple of Surf, the podcast. We'll give you full access to the best surfers, skaters, shapers, surfboard collectors, shop owners in the world. Discover with me their stories, the greatest successes, amazing behind the scenes, and much more. Aloha, welcome to the 21st episode of the Temple of Surf, the podcast. Today with us from California is Jim Kempton, president of the California Surf Museum and author of books. We spoke with him about surf culture, and his latest book, Women on Waves. Hi, Jim, and welcome to the show. Where are you today?
I'm in San Clemente, overlooking Poche Beach.
Today, we're going to talk about many things. We're going to talk about the museum, of course, but we're going to talk about your writing books. The first question is on yourself as a surfer. What, in your opinion, is the most important thing in surf?
I think the most important thing in surfing is to realize what a special experience it is and to enjoy it for more than just going out and doing a sport like you would do another sport. Most of the people who originally, and I say originally over the first 50 years, say, of surfing, really discovered it as this fantastic experience. And I think there are a lot of people that come into the sport now that may come in because they think it's cool, or they want to be in, or they just want something that they can do athletically, and that this special relationship that waves and humans have is something that we should really remember when we're surfing. There's a theory I have that this isn't the theory, but the scientific experience is that all energy moves in waves.
Yeah.
And right now, as we're sitting here, there are millions of waves running through us: audio waves, video waves, heat waves, sonic waves. And the only place in the entire universe that humans get to harness or to ride that energy is on a surfboard in the ocean. And I think that's what makes surfing so different and also so special. When people come in and they can't describe the stoke, and everybody laughs at them and we sound like babbling idiots and we're like, wow, it was just so great. And people think that it's stupid, but really what it is it's indescribable. It is not like hitting a baseball out of the park or throwing a touchdown or, hitting a tennis ball past your opponent. It's this experience with the universe that you're having that you don't even realize until you think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, we are living in waves, basically, in a waves environment ourselves. And maybe we are riding waves even without knowing, right? But the only one knowing is, as you said, while we're surfing. Yeah, interesting concept, of course. And when did you start surfing for the first time?
I started surfing when I was 9. The year before, I had seen Gidget, the movie. And, as a kid, you always want to be a fireman or a policeman or an astronaut or a cowboy. After I saw Gidget, I didn't want to be any of that stuff. I just wanted to be a surfer. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And, people that were older, they all made fun of it and laughed at it and thought it was, corny. But for kids, it was like this revelation about what the beach and surfing could be like. And all of us wanted to do it. So the next year, as soon as I was old enough to save up a little bit of money to get a surfboard, I got one and started surfing. And I was actually living on Guam. I was born overseas. My parents worked in the civil service. And so I was born on Guam, and I learned to surf there at a place called Talifofo Bay, and then we moved around to other places like Hawaii and Japan and so forth. But that was my initial experience with surfing until we moved back to California.
Okay, I always ask what was your first surfboard, but I guess since you were moving around, you're really maybe not having like a proper surfboard until you were in California. Or how did you do? You were like carrying the surfboard with you all the time?
So initially, the surfboards that came to where I was were just what they called Malibus. They were like the pop-outs we have now, only they were a stronger foam, more of like a foam skin. And so what happened with all of us, luckily, is that they were perfect. They were perfect blanks for making real surfboards. So we all shaped them down and learned how to glass and shape and sand and polish and make the boards like real surfboards. And it's amazing how quickly all that happened. It's almost like surfing was like the internet, where one day no one had ever heard of Twitter, and the next day there's 5 billion people using it. But it was really like that. The change was so quick, and the equipment came so fast. So that was the first board that I had, and then we started buying boards from Hawaii.
Okay, and you're like, let's say your real first surfboard, the one that you really like, it was like an achievement for you buying it or shaping it. What was that?
Yeah, that was a Hansen 50-50. They were called. It was a 9.6 with a black fin and a red stripe, and it was absolutely the coolest thing I'd ever imagined.
You still have that board, or no? It's like,
I wish I did. I could retire now, probably.
well, it's quite. They increase the value quite a lot, right?
Especially ones that are like in perfect condition. But I had it for years and years and years, and then like so many things, you don't take care of them, and they just get beat up, and you trade them out or just give them away to someone.
Yeah, and a lot of boards, especially from the 60s, they got snapped, right?
Yeah,
no leash, and
right, exactly.
Quite difficult to find like something in pristine condition, right? Let's go fast forward so many years ahead, and we go to the California Museum of Surfing. How did you start this relationship with the museum?
I just drove by and visited it one day, and the people that were in there were just so friendly, and it was such a cool idea. And I've always been into surf history. I worked at Surfer, and so and I've always been a student of surfing history and surfing culture. And so I just thought this would be a great place to get involved with. And it was very easy. Everyone there was friendly, and that's the way I think it still is, which is one of the real blessings of what we have at the museum, is that the board of directors and the volunteers and the members are all really one big family. I know that sounds corny, but we get along because we have the same goals, and we rarely conflict because we're not looking for our own agenda. It's all about what's best for the museum and preserving and protecting and enhancing surfing and its culture.
Yeah. What is the most representative piece of the museum? I will ask you actually before you answer. Sorry, because I will ask you two things. I will ask you the most representative piece in the museum and your favorite one. So I don't know if you have the same.
Well, when you say representative, I think the biggest attraction that we have is the surfboard that was Bethany Hamilton's surfboard when she was attacked by the shark. It's in a glass case because the foam is exposed from where it was bitten. You can see the bite in the through the board that goes all the way to the stringer. And we can always tell when people get to that surfboard when they're walking through the museum, because we can hear the sort of audible gasp when people see it, because it's just so mind blowing. And we keep it in a plexiglass stand, so it looked kind of like the Mona Lisa. We call it our Mona Lisa.
Yeah, we'll say that
everybody comes to see, But as far as my favorite surfboard, I think is probably, we have one of Duka Hanamoku's boards that says Makai, which is to the ocean or to the sea, and it's carved into the board. And he left it here on one of his trips to Southern California, spreading surfing. And so I think that's my favorite board.
How do you collect all these boards? Is that you are buying, or just people donate them to you? How does it work?
Well, we wish we had the money to buy. We would love to expand and improve our collection. I can just say that our collection is nowhere near complete or as good as many of the private collections. or even other museums. But what we do have is a really strong set of boards that tell the story of surfing history. So starting out with a Hawaiian Alaya, that the Kings rode, and then going through the oldest board in California, Duke's boards, the early 30s boards when fins were first being designed in, and the hot curls that didn't have fins, through the balsa boards, and then the balsa with fiberglass on them, and then finally foam and fiberglass, and then all the different sort of design innovations that came through those. So that's really our purpose, and all we would like to do with that is to upgrade, as you always do at a museum, from one Botticelli to a better Titian, or
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
The storage becomes like a problem, right?
It does, and we're lucky that we have some storage space, but the storage is for everyone and people want to give you their boards even when they have no real value. They think because the board is old that it somehow has value to it, but really there are only a very few brands, if you will, that the logo means something, and even then it needs to be in really good condition, and it needs to have some pedigree. It's one thing to have a George Downing, board shaped by George Downing, but it's another thing to have, a board that George Downing rode himself. Or, it's fine to have, a Fred Hemmings board, but the board that won the 1968 World Contest becomes the board that you'd really like to have in your collection.
Definitely. And you have that board, the 1968 Fred Hemmings?
I wish we did, but a private collector does have it, and it's really nice. Someday we'll probably get those when they don't have any more space to put their collections.
But actually, I have a lot of questions now. The first thing that it popped in my mind is I was talking with I think the third episode or second episode for Australian National Museum of Surfing. I was talking with Craig Baird, that is the curator of the museum, and he was telling me that one of the problems was that when he was removing from display some surfboard of some certain, let's say, Australian surfers, then he was getting a lot of complaints from family and friends of that person, say why did you remove it from the display, And he says somehow I need to rotate all the surfboard, The museum can look so different because we have so many things, But every time I do it, I get complaint on emails saying, why you did it? I found it very funny, right? Because people really care about having their boards, or families or friends board there for display. So it's quite interesting. The first thing that come up to my mind. But then the second thing is that I do collect surfboard, and initially this podcast it was for surfboard collectors. So now I a little bit went around the way, interviewing, Greg Knoll, Tom Carroll, Tom Carr, Rob Machado, whoever, Hank Warner, Pat Rawson. I went a little bit out of the way. Initially, when I started the podcast, I said I want to do something only for surfboard collector, because I think quite a lot are not sharing what they have, and not sharing what they have means that they're not sharing a part of the surfing history.
Yes.
And so museums, and other museums in the US, in California, even UK, around the world, have this possibility to start what the real museums, not the real museum, but let's say the more acclaimed museum in the world that do with paintings, for instance. So you can borrow, surfboard from. Do you borrow from collection, from private collection and display in a museum, or just display your collection?
We borrow all the time.
Okay.
Your question is, do we borrow from other private collections? All the time, and part of that is that we don't have, as I say, the whole story, but also we don't have particular boards that have what we want. So absolutely we want to get the best example of something. So when we did a shortboard exhibition, we wanted to get the very best fishes. We didn't want just a fish. We wanted a Stevie Liss designed fish from the late 1960s. And the same with right now, we're doing an exhibit on wood boards, and we wanted to find the finest of the wood boards that we could possibly find. So yes, we go to private collections frequently because they really have the best, just like in art museums.
How people can support the museum, apart of course, donating a surfboard or part of the surfboard items from the surf history, how they can support you?
Well, the quickest and easiest way is to become a member, and that is just going on. You can just, if you just type in surfmuseum.org, we will come up, and there's a membership button right there on the front page that you can go and become a member. What that does is give you all of the information about what we do. We obviously, COVID has curtailed this at the moment, but we do all kinds of not only exhibits but events where we have people like Billy Hamilton or Greg Knoll or Kelly Slater or Bethany Hamilton come and speak at the museum and talk about all different kinds of topics. Felipe Pomar just came, and Jeff Hackman, Billy Hamilton, all these different really great surfers, young and old alike. Joel Tudor or John Severson. Before he died, we did a huge thing with John book signing his book. We do book signings, we do films where we have the director or the stars come and speak. So we have all these events, and when you join the museum, you can get it. You get the newsletter, and you get oftentimes free to come to the event, or very highly discounted compared to just someone off the street. And so it's really worth it to buy it. I mean, if you attend 2 or 3 things, you a couple of things you paid back what the cost of being a member is, and then the other thing is we'd much rather get a donation of cash, so to speak, than another board, because most of the time, unless they are, as I say, really high pedigree, they're just something that we really shouldn't even take any more of. So the best way, I think, is to become a member, and then to become an active member, a volunteer. And you can do that now because of the internet. You can do that from all over the place. In fact, interestingly enough, I'll just say we have on our Twitter account more people from Brazil than we do from California.
Interesting.
As amazing as that sounds, and part of that is because that reach. There are people who are interested in so many different places around the world. So our both our visitorship and our membership is very international.
Interesting, definitely.
It was really surprising to us when we started analyzing that and seeing where it came from. It really was.
Cool. After this, I promise I will become a member as well. So you have your first membership from Dubai, just around the corner. Okay. Then, so basically, we started about speaking about you as a surfer. Then we went for the for the museum. Then you were saying as well, you have an amazing career, right? From surfer to the museum, publisher. So, but I would like to ask you, how many projects you master in your career and you're mastering today? It looks quite a lot. You're even writing books, right?
I am, yeah. Well, I can only say that as far as a work career, as far as the jobs that I've had, I have been the luckiest guy in the world, because they always say, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yes.
And every job I've ever had, well, I shouldn't say that, but most of the jobs that I have had, and certainly the ones that I've worked for a long time at, have been absolute dream jobs. My first my first job that I ever got was at Surfboards Hawaii, making surfboards, because I learned how to do that when I was a kid because of necessity. And then when, the California big boom hit, particularly the shortboard revolution, everyone was making surfboards. And so I started out working at Surfboards Hawaii, which was a dream job. Billy Hamilton was shaping there, and it was a hub of design energy and innovation and cutting edge. And then I got the job at Surfer magazine and was the editor and then the publisher there for 11 years. And then I went to Transworld Publications when they started their snowboarding magazine because they needed publishing experience. Got to travel all over the country and the world snowboarding and try to open snowboard to all the resorts to open snowboarding. And then I got the job at Quicksilver on the Crossing boat, which was the Indies trader when Quicksilver leased it and had Martin Daly travel all over the world exploring for new surf spots. And so we traveled all over the world for 4 years looking for new spots and putting the team on the boat, and it was an amazing experience. But then I started having kids, and I wanted to do something where I wasn't away all the time. And so I got the job at Billabong as the media director and was at Billabong for 11 years. And a fantastic, experience as well. Just, again, getting to travel a lot to the world and do all the kind of work that I really enjoy doing. So the museum was kind of an outlet for me, to continue to be involved in the kinds of things that I love doing. And in the meantime, I wrote several books. And again, they're just labors of love. You don't make a lot of money on the books that you make about surfing because there's a pretty limited audience, right?
Yeah.
But the last book that I wrote was a cookbook, a surfing cookbook about all the recipes that I'd collected around the world, in my travels, and all the surfing adventures and surfers that I had, I'd gotten them from and or learned about it from a surf region. And now I'm writing a book on the history of women surfing.
Yes, you told me about it. So, but planned to be released at the end of the year, 2021, right?
Yeah, hopefully it's going to come out just before the Olympics. So there'll be a lot of connection to the women on each of the teams from around the world.
Yeah. How did you come up with the idea of doing a book on women surfing?
So interestingly, about 10, now almost 12 years ago, we decided to do an exhibit at the Surf Museum on women. And we realized as we started researching it that it never had really been done very in depth. So we spent almost 2 years doing the research on it. And so the staff of the museum, our historian and our museum manager and myself and other people began to gather this information. And we produced probably the most comprehensive exhibit that's ever been done on women surfing. And we learned so much. And while it wasn't nearly complete, what it did is it gave me a framework for 10 years later for how to hang all of this information. And I was familiar enough with it that I knew that I had the skeleton of the book. And so much has happened in the 10, 12 years since that. In the last 10 or 12 years, women surfing has revolutionized, not only in the quality of the surfing, but in big waves, barriers being broken. I mean, this year, from Brazil, a woman rode the biggest wave of anyone, not just of women, but rode the biggest wave that anyone rode in 2020. So that gives you an idea of the leap in advance that has been made in surfing. And I found so many fascinating things that I never knew. We know that the first woman in Australia, or the first surfer in Australia, was a woman, but the first surfer in Ecuador was a woman. The first surfer in South Africa was a woman. I mean, it's astonishing when you start digging into the history to find all of the things that have come up And so the book has become a gigantic biblical epic. I don't know how I'm going to finish, but I'm almost done.
It's gonna become like a kind of encyclopedia of wave woman surfing, right? It's like
yeah.
You need to edit quite a lot at the end.
I'm sure that my publisher are going to cut half of it out, but I wanted to get everybody in there. It really is striving to include every significant woman surfer and a little bit about them, whether they were a competitor or a free surfer or a traveler or an innovator or a political organizer of the events, to even shapers and artists and media people. So it really tries to cover the whole range of women that have been involved in surfing since the beginning.
You gave me a lot of ideas, because so first of all, what I noticed is that there are a lot of I love reading books. If I could read books, like I have 2 kids, 1 and 2 years old, so I don't sleep at night. I don't have time to read.
Right. I remember those days.
You see. So, but I still buy them with the promise that one day I'm gonna read them, the books. So, and recently, like in the last 6 months, I got 2 books. One was from the Wave Woman book from Iki Aldrake, I think her name.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very interesting, like first woman pioneer, like surfing in Macau or in Peru back in those days. So very interesting story.
It was a very interesting story, and it brought up a lot of that book. I use that book as excerpts from that book in my own, about the whole Makaha, early 50s, the whole Hawaiian scene from the 40s and 50s that she was involved with. And she's a fantastic lady, and her daughter, who wrote the book, is a great gal too. And all those women were really pioneers.
Well, definitely, and really, really strong women, right?
Yeah.
And, not only a surfer, she was also like she was flying little airplanes, like a rock star. And then I got another book called She Surf.
Yes.
But that is still wrapped in plastic, so I didn't even.
Well, you'll enjoy it. It's sort of I would say a sort of mini version, if you will, of what I'm writing. I'm trying to write interesting. Those were collections of interesting stories about various women, very, very exciting and really beautiful and really, really well written, but not the complete story, so to speak. More just like a snapshot of a particular time and place.
Like today, if we look back at the publishing books industry and we see the digital era, we see the death basically of a lot of the traditional way of seeing books, but also maybe there is an opportunity in there of books that are like quite big, that would have been cut or reshaped because of they cannot be of 1,000 pages, but then you can go out with the one version of the book, like a printed book, condensed, and one version that is like in, let's say, electronic.
Yes,
you can add more content, more pages. So it's quite interesting platform, right?
Absolutely, and that's an interesting thing, because it also allows for it to update.
Exactly.
Rather than having to write a whole new 5 chapters, of it 10 years from now, you can just continue to add as records are broken, or new titles are won, or new innovations that come along. You can add on to it. So that it becomes an up-to-date version of whatever the history is.
Yeah, definitely. And the last thing that, because when you speak, I think, and too dangerous, I really want to have on the podcast a shaper woman.
Uh-huh.
because I interviewed so many shapers, old men, and it would be very interesting when you were speaking about women that are shipping, having their perspective as well.
Yeah. I think it would be, well, I mean, obviously there are not a lot, but there are so many more now than there were just 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, as with everything, I think in the feminine side of the world, particularly in surfing, though, I think this has been something that, while there's probably always going to be a conflict between the men and the women, particularly in the water, because there's a conflict between men and men in the water. You know what I mean? It's like it's very evolution theory. The survival of the fittest, and so there's a lot of competition for waves, but the advances that women have made over the last 10 years almost dwarf what had come before it. There's been so much advancement in surfing, culminating with equal pay, which is fantastic because it probably is one of the few sports where it actually makes economic sense. I really believe that, for a whole bunch of reasons, not all of them particularly positive, but for a whole bunch of reasons, people will do enjoy watching women surfing where they might not enjoy them watching them playing basketball or baseball or something like that. Where, because you see it with soccer, it's the same thing. That there's where the sport is something that is more of a beautiful dance, then I think the women tend to be far more attractive to the general audience watching. So I think that there's a huge opportunity and a huge advancement that surfing is kind of now once again leading the societal world, where there was a period where I feel like surfing had stopped doing that. Initially surfing was a real breakthrough. We were one of the first people who took advantage of or really pioneered leisure lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because after World War II was the first time anyone had ever had time to do something besides on Sunday. You took Sunday off as your day of rest, and you did whatever you liked. And then the rest of the time you were working 12 hours a day, right? Yeah. Tilling the field or, going to the office, whatever it happened to be. But for the first time in human history, as a broad scale of society, had leisure time, and people could actually live without having to worry about working every single day. And surfing became part of the initiative of enjoying that. People who were more interested in building their life around what their activity was rather than trying to make ends meet. And so surfing became a real avant-garde, leading edge kind of social development. But it was never that for women. Women always struggled in it, surprisingly. And I say that in the post-Gidget era, right? In the pre-Gidget era, women were accepted, as you saw with the book that you were talking about, Water Woman. That they were very accepted if they were willing to come out and do the same, take the same risks and do the same wave riding that the men were. And before that, in Hawaii, they were very equal.
Yeah.
But after Gidget, there was this sort of girls should sit on the beach and look good in bikinis and get the boards from their guys when they lose their boards, right? And
right?
there was a real resistance to women as active surfers, and that's really changed dramatically in the last 10 years. It's been changing for the last 20 years, but in the last 10 years, these women who are surfing 60-foot waves and these women who are surfing as well as 99% of the guys, they always say, people always ask me, who are the best surfers in the world? Are the men or the women? And I say, well, if you took the top 20 men and the top 20 women, probably the top 20 men would be better than any of the top 20 women. In other words, the number 20 would be better than number 1. But that isn't really the story. The story is, if you took the 5 million surfers in the world and you took all the men, those top 20 women are probably the top 1,000 women are better than 99% of all the men that surf. So that's really the story. You know what I'm saying? Of course, there are going to be guys that are going to be better than the women. That's because of our genetic makeup. But in terms of being able to perform at a super high level beyond what most men would ever dream of doing, these women are just blowing doors right now. You know, they're totally in the lead.
But as you said before, the biggest wave of 2020 was not surfed by a man, right?
Well, and it's interesting for me anyway. I have always had a very different take on the competition scene. It's very successful now, and has been for some time. And I really laud the guys that that started professional surfing because they gave people a chance to make a living at doing what they did best and deserved to have in the whole busting down the door period. Those guys really wanted Rabbit and Sean and Ian and PT and Buzzy and all those guys were they really wanted to be professionals. And they worked very hard at making that happen. And Fred and Randy gave them the opportunity by building the world tour to do that. But at the same time, I think that a lot of the surfing leaders miss the real attraction that surfing has for the world. And that is the same attraction that most surfers have. Most surfers don't start surfing because they want to become professional surfers. Surfers start surfing because they love wave riding, right? They're not interested in making the team. In fact, that's why they left it. They left the team to come go surf because they don't want a coach yelling at them. They don't want to have to wear uniforms. They want to have to beat somebody else in order to be successful. And the appeal, as I said before, of just riding a natural wave of energy is so, there's no other word for it, addicting, to people when they experience it, that they continue to do that. And that's the real attraction to surfing. And at the same time, I think people are the general audience is far more interested in, for instance, big wave riding than they are in, trying to see if someone can do an aerial on a 3-foot wave.
Yeah.
For most of the people who watch surfing, they'd much rather see the contest be, or even, it doesn't even need to be a contest, but they'd much rather watch Piahi than they would Backdoor.
Yeah.
Or better still, Rio, say, you know what I mean, on a small day. That just doesn't, for the most part, that doesn't interest people. And contests, by and large, and again, I'm probably get shot for saying these things, but the contests in general are boring. They're not, because they're not like a football game where you have an hour to play, right? And the tension is about that time frame. In surfing, it's like there's only one guy that's happy at the end of a surf contest. Right? Everybody else is miserable. And the moment that a surfer loses and is eliminated, he doesn't stick around and watch even the competitors go home. They don't even stick around and watch the show, right? That tells you how boring it is for most of the people. So in the television coverage of it has actually made surfing a lot more interesting because you can cut out the in-between times. But still, you have a contest and then, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, 3 days from now, come back, we're gonna have the rest of the contest or part of the rest of the contest. Maybe if the surf is good, It's not like you can say Sunday afternoon, I'm going to go down and watch, the Lakers play or the Chargers play or whatever the team is at 3:00 in the afternoon for an hour. That's what's going to be. It's like this thing can go on for weeks and nobody knows when. I mean, it's hard to get an audience beyond the very, very deeply committed surfers in order to do that. And that's why if that part of it will probably become successful with wave pools.
Yeah.
Because then you really can do a 1 day, experience where you say, we're only going to take the top 10 guys and we're going to have this surf off, and we can do it all on Saturday afternoon, and everyone can tune in, and they will, and it will be about their performance. So, the wave pool may change that whole dynamic, but once again, then you make it like, in my mind, you kind of make it like gymnastics. It's like, what's going to happen? The big move, the thing that's going to win in a wave pool where the wave is the same all the time, is going to be the aerial, because everyone can do the same. At this stage, almost every surfer on the circuit can do as hard a bottom turn, as hard a cut back, and as good a tube ride as any other. They all have an ability to do that. So the aerial is where you make this giant risk, where you fly up into the air, and then it all becomes just like in gymnastics. It all becomes sticking it, right? It's the landing. In diving, it's the entry, right? Everybody can do 3 flips, but which competitor hits the water perfectly and doesn't break a ripple? Which gymnast comes off the bar and lands without even wobbling when they stick their landing? That's going to become what it is. So it will become like a gymnastic sport, as opposed to this wave riding experience that requires wave knowledge and tides and wind and knowledge about everything involved with it, which is a whole different experience.
Definitely, and still thinking about 2 things. First is like the evolution of wave riding in surf pools and snowboard, because we're talking about air, and we're talking about the evolution of snowboard. I think you know better than me, right? And now the X Games and all the things that really pumped the snowboard into a different direction than just seeing people sliding on the slope. That maybe is, so for somebody is boring, And so I'm talking about the perfection of the sport. But then if I ask you Tokyo 2021, wave pool or ocean, you would have preferred like wave pool, or you're happy for the choice that the committee made?
No, that's why I say I think there's 2 different. Surfing has been fragmenting since its very beginning, right? And short boards, long boards, was probably the first major big break to that. But then all kinds of other things in professional surfing. In my mind, if you're going to have an Olympic sport, you do swimming. You don't do swimming in the ocean. You're swimming in a pool, in the Olympics.
Yeah.
But Duke Hanamoku, all he ever swam in was the ocean.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why he was so good is he was swimming when he was, doing his quote training, which again, like we were talking about surfing, was just swimming all the time, right? He and his brothers and his friends would like swim like crazy. And I don't know if you know this story, but it's a great story I'll tell you about Duke Hanamoku, is because it relates to my idea of surfing. Is the Hawaiians, are very, very humble people. They are not, they don't, what we call now, claim, right? They don't beat their chest. They don't raise their fist. They don't pretend like that they just conquered the world because they happen to get a great wave. And Duke Hanamoku used to swim with his brothers and his friends, and it was uncool for him to just blow everybody out and win, and swim way ahead of them. So Duke would swim with all of them, head to head, just like, right to the very last minute. And then he would surge ahead and like, just barely touch the bar to win, like in front of his friends. So when they had the Olympic trials, his coach took him and said, look, Duke, the Howleys are coming, and they are not your friends, and they are not your brothers, and they are not going to be, just waiting for you to take a moment. So what I want you to do is, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to swim as hard as you possibly can across that pool. Will you promise me that you'll do that? And Duke said, yeah, okay, sure. He broke the record by more than 2 seconds.
Wow.
Which even then they were breaking records by tenths of a second. No one in the history of swimming has ever broken a record by 2 seconds. Duke. And when they asked him, well, like what how did you do that? He said, well, my coach just told me to, put my head down and swim as hard as I could. And I'd never done that before.
Wow.
Because in Hawaii, that was uncool, but because they were swimming all the time, they were swimming against the tide and against the waves and in the rip currents. So the strength and the agility that he learned in the ocean really helped him when there was nothing but a pool there. The same way that, I'm sure that will be the case with, when they have Olympic pools. But in my mind, if you're going to do an Olympic competition, it's better to do it in a pool because it's the only really fair way, right? Because now everybody has the same playing field exactly. And in an Olympic situation, that's just fine with me. I don't mind that at all. But I think if they think that that's going to be hugely attractive,
no.
I mean, everybody watches the Olympics once every 4 years. But have you ever watched another diving contest? Have you ever watched an ice skating contest? Have you ever gone to a gymnast competition? No, none of us do, right? We watch it at the Olympics. That's it. So, I mean, it isn't going to revolutionize surfing and make it like this giant popular sport or give it all this something, because it only happens every 4 years and people don't care in between in terms of the competition of it. So I think it will still, the appeal of riding waves by yourself or, with your friends and in the ocean will always be the huge appeal.
Yeah, definitely. There is more than just like a TV show,
Right.
You talk a lot about the Duke and surfing with the Aloha represents much more than just surfing. It's,
absolutely.
Okay. Absolutely. We're going to finish with our interview with a short Q&A, so question and answer session. Answer the first thing that comes up to your mind, okay?
All right.
Best surfboard that you ever ridden?
Best surfboard I have ever ridden, I have to say, was a Billy Stewart Fun Gun that I was never able to get exactly the same one again. Those magic boards. I've had a few magic boards. You can never quite get that again. But it was a 610, and I felt like I never had the confidence on a surfboard like I had with that one. It was one of those things where if I didn't fall off, I knew it would make the wave. As long as I stayed with it, I would make the wave.
Yes, definitely. I got what you mean. Your favorite shaper?
Favorite shaper? Boy, that's a tougher one. Let me just think about that for a moment, because right off the top, I would say either Bob McTavish or Dick Brewer, because I think they were the two most influential shapers in the world of surfing.
Yeah,
they were the guys that really revolutionized surfboard design. So I guess that's what I would say is a match between those two.
I think I read the book of Bob McTavish. He wrote a lot in the book. Very nice, very nice. Amazing.
Yeah.
Your favorite song?
I think probably Moondance by Van Morrison.
Okay. Your favorite surf spot?
Favorite surf spot has to be Lower Trestles.
Yeah. There is no place like home, right?
No place like home. And especially, back when I first started surfing it, we used to get it in the wintertime all the time to ourselves. It was amazing. And so, it's a hero wave. Even guys like me can look good at trestles.
Your favorite surfer today?
For one of being really boring, and I mean predictable, I have to say John.
Okay.
He just has the all round deal going. And he's still so young. He's so humble, and he's so stylish. He's so stylish in his surfing.
And he's not only a surfer; he's a waterman, right?
Yes, all round.
And so we go back to the Duke again. Like he was a waterman first, and then a surfer, right?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Important. Last question. We ask everybody, nothing to do with surf history, surf museum, surf nothing. Your best relationship advice.
My best relationship advice?
Yes.
Well, if you're talking about with a woman, I think the best advice is always say yes.
Thank you, Jim, for being on the show with me. And I gotta do the subscription to the museum today from Dubai. And
that's wonderful. Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. It was a real great pleasure. I hope I get a chance. Let's stay in touch. I'd love to continue our conversations.
Of course, definitely. Thank you so much and enjoy your day. Ciao.
You bet.
Hi, it's me again. I hope you enjoyed our today's episode. If you want to know more about us, please follow www.thetempleofsurf.com and all our social media. Mahalo!